High school prom season, the time of year filled with anticipation, anxiety, and the promise of unforgettable memories. For many, it's a rite of passage, a night to dress up and celebrate the end of an era before stepping into the unknown future that awaits after graduation. That's how it was supposed to be for me too. I'm Alex, a senior who spent most of high school flying under the radar, more comfortable in the background than the spotlight. I never imagined my prom night would become a story worth telling, but here we are. My best friend Jamie had been counting down to prom since freshman year. Jamie is the kind of person who lights up every room, outgoing, effortlessly popular, and fiercely loyal. We've been inseparable since middle school, an unlikely pair that somehow just worked. While I preferred quiet weekends and small gatherings, Jamie lived for social events and had been planning our prom experience with military precision for months. Then there was Jamie's brother, Ethan. A year older than us, he'd graduated the previous year but was back in town for the summer after his freshman year of college. Ethan had always been kind to me, but we'd never really connected beyond brief conversations when I was at their house. He had this quiet confidence that made my heart race whenever he entered a room. His dark eyes seemed to notice everything, and his smile, rare but genuine, could make me forget what I was saying mid-sentence. I never told Jamie about my feelings for Ethan. How could I? It seemed like the fastest way to complicate our friendship, and besides, what were the chances that someone like him would ever look twice at someone like me? But when Jamie mentioned that Ethan would be attending our prom as a +1 for his friend Sophie, who needed a date after a recent breakup, my stomach twisted with a mixture of excitement and dread. I'd be spending the most anticipated night of high school in the same room as my secret crush, trying desperately to act normal. Let me explain why corsages matter at prom. They might seem like a small detail amid the grandeur of formal wear and limousines, but these floral accessories carry significant weight in prom tradition. They're not just flowers strapped to wrists, they're symbols of care, thoughtfulness, and attention to detail. For someone who overthinks everything like me, the corsage I'd chosen matched perfectly with my midnight blue dress, white roses with subtle blue accents and a ribbon that took 3 stores to find in just the right shade. I'd spent weeks coordinating this small detail, wanting everything to be perfect for my one big night of high school glory. The weeks leading up to prom were a whirlwind of preparations. Jamie dragged me to 6 different stores before we found our perfect dresses. Mine was a floor-length midnight blue gown with silver embellishments that caught the light when I moved. It was more elegant than anything I'd ever owned, and when I tried it on, even I had to admit that for once, I felt beautiful. Jamie chose a bold red dress that perfectly complemented her outgoing personality and made her look like she'd stepped off a Hollywood red carpet. We spent countless hours discussing hairstyles, makeup looks, and shoes that wouldn't leave us crippled by the end of the night. Jamie's enthusiasm was infectious, and despite my natural inclination toward anxiety, I found myself getting caught up in the excitement. Maybe this night would be everything the movies promised: magical, transformative, a perfect ending to our high school chapter. The day of prom arrived with perfect weather, clear skies, and mild temperatures, as if even nature was celebrating with us. Jamie's mom insisted on hosting our pre-prom preparations, turning their living room into a makeshift salon. With music playing and Jamie's mom taking hundreds of photos, we spent the afternoon getting ready, transforming from regular high school students into glamorous versions of ourselves. I was putting the finishing touches on my makeup when the front door opened, and Ethan walked in. He was already dressed in his tuxedo, and my breath caught in my throat. He looked like he'd stepped out of a magazine, tall and confident, his dark hair styled perfectly, the black tuxedo fitting him like it was made specifically for him. Our eyes met briefly in the mirror, and he smiled that smile that always made my knees weak. "You both look amazing," he said, leaning against the doorframe. "Prom royalty material for sure." Jamie rolled her eyes at her brother. "Where's Sophie? Aren't you supposed to be picking her up?" "She's meeting me here for photos," Ethan replied. Mom insisted on the full photo shoot experience with everyone. The next hour was a blur of arrivals: Jamie's date Michael, Sophie looking stunning in emerald green, and parents wielding cameras like weapons. We posed in every possible combination while our parents exchanged knowing looks and made comments about how quickly we'd grown up. Through it all, I was hyper-aware of Ethan's presence, careful not to stand too close or look at him too long. It wasn't until we were about to leave for the venue that disaster struck. I overheard Sophie asking Ethan about her corsage, and the look of horror that crossed his face said everything. He'd forgotten it. Completely. In the chaos of returning home from college and agreeing to be Sophie's last-minute date, the corsage had slipped his mind entirely. "I can't believe I forgot," he said, running a hand through his carefully styled hair. The florist is definitely closed by now. Sophie tried to hide her disappointment, assuring him it wasn't a big deal, but I could see she was upset. Corsages and boutonnieres were part of the prom experience, and now she'd be the only one without one in all the photos. Without thinking, I touched the corsage on my own wrist, the one I'd spent weeks perfecting. Jamie caught my eye, and I knew we were thinking the same thing. Before I could second-guess myself, I spoke up. "You can borrow mine," I offered, my voice sounding steadier than I felt. "It would actually match your dress really well, Sophie." Everyone turned to look at me, and I felt my face flush under the attention. Sophie's eyes widened in surprise. "I couldn't take your corsage," she protested. "You've been planning your outfit for months." I shrugged, trying to appear more casual than I felt. "It's just flowers. The important thing is that everyone has a good time tonight." The gratitude in Sophie's eyes made the sacrifice worth it, but it was Ethan's expression that caught me off guard. He was looking at me with something I couldn't quite identify, surprise, certainly, but also something deeper, more thoughtful. "That's incredibly kind of you, Alex," he said quietly, and the way he said my name made my heart skip. Jamie's mom, ever the problem solver, suggested we carefully remove the corsage from my wrist and transfer it to Sophie's. As Ethan gently untied the ribbon from my wrist, his fingers brushed against my skin, and I hoped no one noticed the way my breath hitched. Our eyes met briefly as he held the corsage, and something unspoken passed between us, a moment of connection I hadn't anticipated. "Thank you," he murmured, so only I could hear. That was really something. The drive to the prom venue was filled with excited chatter, but I was lost in my thoughts, replaying that brief moment with Ethan over and over. The school gymnasium had been transformed beyond recognition. Twinkling lights hung from the ceiling like stars, creating the illusion of dancing under a night sky. Tables draped in blue and silver linen surrounded a dance floor where a DJ was already playing music as early arrivals filtered in. Our group found a table and settled in, taking in the atmosphere and pointing out classmates in their formal wear. Jamie immediately pulled Michael to the dance floor, leaving me at the table with Ethan and Sophie. I tried not to feel like a third wheel, focusing instead on the decorations and the excitement around us. "Would you like something to drink?" Ethan asked, and it took me a moment to realize he was talking to me, not Sophie. "Oh, sure," I stammered. "Whatever they have is fine." When he walked away to the refreshment table, Sophie leaned closer to me. "That was really sweet of you to give me your corsage," she said. "Ethan told me you two don't really know each other that well." I shrugged, unsure how to respond. "We don't, really. Jamie and I have been friends forever, so I've known him for years, but we've never really talked much." Sophie smiled, twisting the corsage on her wrist, my corsage. "Well, he was really impressed by what you did. He wouldn't stop talking about it in the car." Before I could process what that meant, Ethan returned with drinks for all of us. The conversation shifted to lighter topics, college experiences, mutual friends, predictions for prom king and queen. I found myself relaxing as the night progressed, surprised by how easy it was to talk with both of them. When a slow song started playing, Sophie was asked to dance by a friend from her chemistry class. She looked at Ethan questioningly, but he waved her off with a smile. "Go ahead," he said. "I'm not the jealous type." As Sophie disappeared into the crowd, Ethan turned to me. "So, no date tonight?" I shook my head, suddenly self-conscious. "No, Jamie and I decided to focus on having fun with friends rather than stressing about dates." He nodded thoughtfully. "Smart approach." My senior prom was a disaster because I was so worried about making it perfect for my date that I forgot to actually enjoy it. "Is that why you agreed to come with Sophie? A prom redemption story?" I asked, surprised by my own boldness. Ethan laughed, and the sound made something warm bloom in my chest. "Partly. Sophie's a good friend, and I hated the thought of her missing out because some guy couldn't see how amazing she is. But honestly, I was also curious to see how my sister's class would end their high school experience." He paused, looking at me with those dark eyes that seemed to see right through me. And maybe I was hoping to get to know some of Jamie's friends better. Before I could decipher what that meant, Jamie returned to the table, flushed from dancing, and pulled me to my feet. "Come on. They're playing our song." The next hour was a blur of dancing, laughing, and forgetting to be self-conscious. Our friend group expanded and contracted on the dance floor, everyone taking turns to sit out the fastest songs or grab refreshments. I noticed Ethan watching me a few times, but convinced myself it was just coincidence until he appeared beside me during another slow song. "Would you like to dance?" he asked, extending his hand. I hesitated, looking around for Sophie, but Ethan shook his head. She's dancing with her chemistry partner again. I think there might be some actual chemistry happening there. Taking a deep breath, I placed my hand in his. I should warn you, I'm not very good at this. That makes two of us, he replied, leading me to the dance floor. As we swayed to the music, I was acutely aware of his hand on my waist, the slight scent of his cologne, and how perfectly we seemed to fit together. We talked about everything and nothing, his college experiences, my plans after graduation, books we'd both read, movies we'd both seen. It felt like discovering a connection that had been there all along, just waiting for the right moment to reveal itself. I've always wondered why we never really talked before, Ethan said as the song was ending. Every time I came home from college, Jamie would mention you, and you sounded like someone I'd get along with. I guess I was always a little intimidated, I admitted. You were Jamie's cool older brother. I didn't think you'd be interested in talking to your sister's quiet friend. His expression softened. I've always noticed you, Alex. The way you listen when others speak, how you remember details about people that most would forget, how you gave up your perfect corsage tonight without hesitation. People like you are rare. The DJ announced the last dance of the night, and around us, couples moved closer together, savoring the final moments of prom. Ethan's hands tightened slightly on my waist. Can I tell you something? He asked, his voice lower now. I didn't actually forget the corsage. I pulled back slightly, confused. What do you mean? He looked almost embarrassed. Sophie and I had this plan. She knew I wanted to talk to you tonight, to get to know you better. The forgotten corsage was her idea, a way to break the ice. She's actually had her eye on David from chemistry class for months, but needed a date to prom after her breakup. My mind raced to process this information. So, the whole corsage emergency was fake? The emergency was planned, but your response wasn't what we expected. We thought maybe you'd help us find a last-minute solution, not offer your own corsage. When you did that, he shook his head, smiling. It confirmed everything I'd thought about you. I should have been annoyed at being manipulated, but instead, I felt a strange mixture of flattery and amusement. That's either the sweetest or the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. Probably both, he admitted. But it worked, didn't it? We're here, dancing, talking. I've learned more about you tonight than in all the years you've been friends with Jamie. As the final song ended, Ethan didn't let go of my hand. Instead, he led me away from the dance floor, finding a quiet corner near the exit. Prom's ending, but the night doesn't have to be said. A bunch of people are heading to the all-night diner for pancakes. Would you want to join? As my actual date this time? My heart was racing, but for once, my anxiety wasn't in the driver's seat. I'd like that, I replied. But first, I think you owe me a corsage. His laugh was warm and genuine. I'll buy you a whole garden of them if you'll give me a chance. We found Jamie and explained our plans. My best friend's knowing smile told me that perhaps Jamie had suspected my feelings for Ethan all along. About time, was all Jamie said, giving me a quick hug before rejoining Michael. The diner was crowded with prom-goers in formal wear, creating a surreal scene of tuxedos and gowns squeezed into vinyl booths, sharing plates of pancakes and French fries. Ethan and I found a small table in the corner, away from the main crowd. As we talked through the night, watching the sky gradually lighten outside the windows, I realized that prom hadn't been at all what I'd expected. It had been infinitely better. The next morning, when Ethan drove me home, a small box waited for me on the passenger seat. Inside was a corsage, identical to the one I'd given away, with a note that read, "For the next dance," and the one after that. Looking back now, I realized that sometimes the most meaningful moments come from unexpected places. My perfect prom hadn't been about having the right dress or the perfect corsage. It had been about finding the courage to be myself and discovering that sometimes the person you've been looking for has been noticing you all along. That corsage exchange became the first chapter of our story, a reminder that sometimes the most beautiful beginnings come from small acts of kindness. And every year on prom night, Ethan brings me a new corsage, a tradition that started with borrowed flowers and nervous hearts, but blossomed into something neither of us could have planned. So if you're standing on the edge of your own moment of truth, wondering whether to take that chance or make that sacrifice, remember that sometimes the smallest gestures can open doors to possibilities you never imagined. The night I gave away my perfect corsage, I gained something far more valuable, the beginning of a love story that started with borrowed flowers and nervous hearts, but grew into something beautiful and real. Total_char_count, 17,753.